Tuesday of the 25th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the Book of Ezra.
King Darius issued an order to the officials of west of Euphrates. Let the governor and the elders of the Jews continue the work on that house of God. They are to rebuild it on its former site. I also issue this decree concerning your dealing with these elders of the Jews in the rebuilding of that house of God. From the royal revenue, the taxes of west of Euphrates, let these men be repaid for their expenses in full and without delay. I, Darius, have issued this decree. Let it be carefully executed. The elders of the Jews continued to make progress in the building, supported by the message of the prophets, Haggai and Zechariah, the son of Iddo. They finished the building according to the command of the God of Israel, and the decrees of Cyrus and Darius and of Artaxerxes, king of Persia. They completed this house on the 3rd day of the month Adar, in the 6th year of the reign of King Darius. The children of Israel, priests, Levites, and the other returned exiles, celebrated the dedication of this house of God with joy. For the dedication of this house of God, they offered 100 bulls, 200 rams, and 400 lambs, together with 12 he-goats as a sin offering for all Israel, in keeping with the number of the tribes of Israel. Finally, they set up the priests in their classes, and the Levites in their divisions, for the service of God in Jerusalem, as is prescribed in the book of Moses. The exiles kept the Passover on the 14th day of the first month. The Levites, every one of whom had purified himself for the occasion, sacrificed the Passover for the rest of the exiles, for their brethren the priests, and for themselves. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord." I rejoiced because they said to me, "We will go up to the house of the Lord." And now we have set foot within your gates, O Jerusalem. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord. Jerusalem, built as a city with compact unity. To it the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord. According to the decree for Israel, to give thanks to the name of the Lord. In it are set up judgment seats, seats for the house of David. Let us go rejoicing to the house of the Lord.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. The mother of Jesus and his brothers came to him, but were unable to join him because of the crowd. He was told, "Your mother and your brothers are standing outside and they wish to see you." He said to them in reply, "My mother and my brothers are those who hear the word of God and act on it." The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from Ezra 6, 7-8, 12b, and 14-20. This is part of the edict that King Darius issued, speaking about the reconstruction of the temple in Jerusalem. In fact, whenever pagan populations were sent back under Cyrus, his predecessor, it was understood that one of the first things they would do is rebuild their temples. This was an act of piety, and it was considered essential for the people in order to live in peace. Well, what Darius commands is that the normal taxes that would be paid would instead go to the rebuilding of the temple. And we hear that under Haggai and Zechariah, the prophets, the Jewish people were encouraged to rebuild the temple. Encouraged is probably a very weak word. They were nagged. Because in fact, the first thing they did was rebuild their own houses. And the reconstruction of the temple lagged quite a bit. The version of the reconstruction of the temple that we hear in Ezra is very positive compared to what we hear in other sources. It took the Jewish people a long time, and even when they reconstructed it, it was a very pitiful building in comparison to the temple that Solomon had built. We hear that the orders of the priests and Levites are reestablished, that the hierarchy of the Jewish faith has returned to Judea. The people can worship again as they once did before the exile. Now there will be a tension here because the very poor people have been left in Judah, and there they established their own forms of worship. They didn't need priests. And when the priests came back and tried to tell the poor people that they were doing it the wrong way, there was tension between those who had remained and those who had been in exile. The Gospel is from Luke 8:19-21. A woman shouts out a blessing upon the mother and brothers of Jesus. Now remember, those brothers are probably cousins. The word brother in Aramaic has a very wide meaning. And even though the Gospel is written in Greek, very often the Gospel authors, especially Luke, translates literally the phrases that were used in Aramaic. So these are probably cousins. Why is Mary blessed? Because she bore Jesus. Jesus' response, it's more important that she heard the word of God and followed it. That in fact Mary is the perfect disciple in the Gospel of Luke. She is the one who embraced the word of God and made it incarnate in the earth. Luke has her show up at Pentecost, showing that she's both the mother of the disciples and the example of the perfect disciple. And may God bless us.